Imagine walking down a quiet cobblestone street in 1937, right in the heart of the Great Depression. Money is scarce, jobs are non-existent, and the mood is somber. But suddenly, a rich, sweet aroma hits you. It's warm, comforting, and utterly irresistible. You follow your nose to a tiny brick building in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. There, a young man named Vernon Rudolph has rented a small space, bought a secret yeast-raised recipe from a New Orleans chef, and is frying up a fresh batch of doughnuts meant exclusively for local grocery stores. He doesn't even have a storefront yet, but the scent drifting through the air is doing the selling for him. Please make sure to stick around until the very end of this video, where we will dive deep into the fascinating business and life lessons learned from this wild roller coaster journey. The demand is so overwhelming that passers-by start knocking on the bakery door, begging to buy the pastries fresh and hot right out of the fryer. Recognizing a golden opportunity, Vernon takes a hammer and literally smashes a hole right through the outside brick wall of his factory. He installs a simple service window and begins selling hot, original glazed doughnuts directly to the sidewalk traffic for just a few pennies. This moment of pure, improvised retail genius changes everything. It marks the birth of Krispy Kreme not just as a bakery, but as an interactive, real-time sensory experience that people will willingly queue up for. By the time the 1940s and 1950s roll around, Vernon's humble operation expands aggressively across the American South. The company standardizes its look with iconic green-tiled roofs, massive glass display cases, and large viewing windows. This allows customers to watch the mesmerizing automated Ring of King machines flip and glaze the dough in real time. It isn't just about satisfying a sugar craving anymore. It is dinner theater for dessert lovers. Krispy Kreme builds a fanatical regional following based entirely on word of mouth and the unparalleled magic of immediate freshness. Following the passing of Vernon Rudolph in 1973, Krispy Kreme went through a period of corporate ownership under Beatrice Foods that nearly stripped the brand of its soul. Corporate executives tried to change the menu, adding soup and sandwiches, and even altered the sacred secret donut recipe to cut costs. Frustrated by the decline, a passionate group of early franchisees rallied together in 1982, led by Joseph A. McAleer Sr., to buy the company back. They immediately restored the original recipe and shifted the spotlight back to what they did best: pure, unadulterated donut perfection. By 1992, they were ready to unleash a marketing weapon that would change fast food history forever: the iconic Hot Light. The concept was deceptively simple, but psychologically brilliant. Whenever a fresh batch of original glazed donuts was rolling off the glazing line, a bright neon red sign shaped like a vintage lantern was switched on in the shop window. It read, "Hot Donuts Now." It wasn't just signage, it was a psychological trigger. To anyone driving home after a long shift or walking by on a chilly evening, that glowing red light was an inescapable siren song. It signaled that if you pulled over right now, you wouldn't just get a snack, you would get a warm, melting, melt-in-your-mouth piece of culinary heaven. This simple neon beacon turned the brand from a southern staple into a cultural phenomenon. It created an unprecedented level of urgency. People didn't plan trips to Krispy Kreme, they reacted to the light. It became a communal beacon, sparking impromptu late-night runs among college students, families, and police officers alike. The hot light transformed the act of buying a donut into a high-stakes, real-time event, setting the stage for one of the most explosive expansions the fast food world had ever seen. By the turn of the millennium, Krispy Kreme was no longer just a beloved regional secret. It was a certified cultural juggernaut. On April 5, 2000, the company took the ultimate leap and went public on the Nasdaq, debuting under the ticker symbol KREM. Wall Street investors, usually cold and calculated, completely lost their minds over the sweet-smelling stock. The IPO was a massive success, with shares skyrocketing from an initial price of $21 all the way past $50 in a matter of months. Investment bankers and analysts dubbed it the ultimate growth stock, confidently comparing its expansion potential to a young Starbucks or McDonald's. With a massive war chest of investor cash, Krispy Kreme kicked its expansion into absolute overdrive. They moved aggressively out of their traditional southern stronghold and invaded major metropolitan areas like New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. The openings of these new stores weren't just standard business launches, they were massive public events. People would literally pitch tents and camp out on sidewalks for days just to be the first in line. Celebrities flaunted the iconic polka dot boxes at high-profile Hollywood after-parties, and the brand achieved an pochty mythical cult status across the globe. The financial world couldn't get enough of the numbers. Quarter after quarter, the company reported double-digit sales growth. They began expanding internationally, opening stores in Canada, the UK, and Australia, proving that the universal love for warm, glazed dough spanned across cultures and oceans. By 2003, the stock had split multiple times, and the company's market capitalization soared past $2 billion. It seemed absolutely nothing could stop the Krispy Kreme juggernaut. They had successfully commoditized joy, and Wall Street was laughing all the way to the bank. But just as quickly as the sugar high lifted Krispy Kreme to the heavens, the inevitable crash hit with devastating force. By 2004, the cracks in the glaze began to show. The company had pursued growth at all costs, forcing new stores into markets that couldn't support them and oversaturating the public. Suddenly, Krispy Kreme boxes weren't just a special treat found at the theater of their hot light factories. They were everywhere, stacked coldly on the shelves of local gas stations, grocery stores, and corner delis. The exclusivity and magic vanished, replaced by the mundane reality of stale, day-old pastries. To make matters worse, a massive cultural shift hit the food industry like a tidal wave, the low-carb revolution. Led by the explosive popularity of the Atkins and South Beach diets, millions of health-conscious consumers suddenly began viewing sugar and carbohydrates as public enemy number one. A glaze-soaked, deep-fried ball of white flour was the exact antithesis of this new dietary trend. Foot traffic into stores plummeted, and for the first time since going public, the company missed its quarterly earnings targets, sending shockwaves through the financial sector. The final crippling blow came not from the kitchens, but from the accounting department. In late 2004, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, launched a formal investigation into the company's financial practices. Accusations of channel stuffing, essentially forcing franchises to buy extra equipment and inventory at the end of quarters to artificially inflate corporate revenues, came to light. The scandal forced massive earnings restatements, the ousting of top executives, and a catastrophic plunge in stock price from a peak of $50 down to a dismal $1.01. The Wall Street darling was officially on life support. Between 2005 and 2009, Krispy Kreme stared directly into the abyss of total bankruptcy. The corporate brand was severely tarnished, investor lawsuits were piling up, and the company was suffocating under a massive mountain of debt. To survive, the newly appointed turnaround management team had to perform emergency triage. They ruthlessly shut down hundreds of underperforming stores, terminated bad international licensing agreements, and downsized their bloated headquarters. The explosive golden era of rapid expansion was officially dead. The company was now in a desperate fight just to keep the remaining fryers turned on. The bleeding was severe. Many passionate franchise owners who had invested their life savings into the brand during the early 2000s boom went completely bankrupt. Relationships between corporate leadership and local operators turned completely toxic. Because the brand had lost its premium luster, stores had to rely heavily on deep discounting and aggressive couponing just to get people through the doors. This desperate move kept the cash flowing, but it severely eroded the profit margins and pushed the company's financial stability right to the edge of a cliff. Yet, amid the wreckage, a small glimmer of hope remained. While the corporate offices were in utter chaos, the core product still possessed an undeniable nostalgic magic. Millions of loyal fans worldwide still deeply loved the original glazed donut whenever they could get it hot and fresh. This deep-seated emotional connection to the brand became the foundation for survival. Krispy Kreme didn't need to reinvent the wheel or chase new dietary trends. They simply needed to fix their broken business model, regain the trust of their operators, and survive long enough to fight another day. As a new decade dawned, Krispy Kreme finally stopped the bleeding by adopting a radical strategy: humbleness. Under new leadership, the company abandoned its dreams of global world domination and focused squarely on fixing its core operations. They moved away from the massive, expensive factory stores that required high real estate costs and instead shifted to a hub-and-spoke model. Smaller, more efficient retail shops, the spokes, were opened to serve customers, while the larger factory stores, the hubs, produced the fresh dough and supplied them daily. This dramatically lowered overhead costs while keeping the product incredibly fresh. At the same time, the brand re-embraced its heritage. They stopped trying to compete with coffee giants or healthy cafes and put the focus back on the theater of the doughnut. They upgraded their digital strategy, launching a hot light smartphone app that alerted fans in real time exactly when a fresh batch of glazed donuts was rolling off the assembly line. This brilliant marriage of 1950s sensory marketing with 21st century mobile technology sparked a massive resurgence in late-night visits and restored the brand's youthful, fun energy. By simplifying the menu, patching up fractured relationships with franchise owners, and paying down debt, Krispy Kreme slowly clawed its way back to financial health. The brand became profitable again, and international markets began to thrive under a much more controlled, sustainable licensing model. They proved that sometimes the best way to move forward in business is to look backward and remember exactly what made people fall in love with you in the first place. By 2016, Krispy Kreme's quiet, steady recovery caught the eye of one of the world's most secretive and powerful retail empires, JAB Holding Company. JAB, an investment firm managing the wealth of Europe's ultra-wealthy Ryman family, was on a massive mission to build a global coffee and breakfast monopoly. They had already acquired powerhouse brands like Peet's Coffee, Caribou Coffee, and Keurig. They recognized that Krispy Kreme was a damaged diamond in the rough, a brand with unparalleled global recognition that had been held back by years of bad corporate debt and poor management. In May 2016, JAB launched a stunning takeover bid, agreeing to buy Krispy Kreme for a staggering $1.35 billion in cash. The deal took the company completely off the public stock market and returned it to a private entity. Free from the short-term, ruthless pressures of Wall Street's quarterly earnings calls, the brand finally had the breathing room and financial backing it needed to think long-term. JAB poured hundreds of millions of dollars into modernizing the brand's supply chains, upgrading dated retail technology, and completely refreshing the look of older stores. Under this new private ownership, Krispy Kreme also embarked on a highly selective acquisition strategy of its own. They began buying back underperforming domestic franchise markets to regain direct corporate control over the customer experience. This massive cash infusion allowed them to experiment with innovative flagship stores, like a massive 24-hour location in New York City's Times Square, featuring a literal glaze waterfall. The brand was no longer just surviving, it was playing offense with a massive billionaire war chest backing every single move. 5 years after going private, a revitalized, streamlined, and heavily modernized Krispy Kreme was ready to reclaim its crown on the public stage. On July 1st, 2021, the company officially returned to Wall Street, debuting on the Nasdaq under a brand new confident ticker symbol, DNUT. This wasn't the same fragile company that had collapsed under accounting scandals nearly 2 decades prior. Backed by JAB's disciplined management, Krispy Kreme presented itself to a new generation of investors as an omni-channel sweet treat powerhouse capable of delivering joy both in-store and directly to consumer doorsteps. To generate massive hype for its return, the brand pulled off one of the most culturally relevant and discussed marketing campaigns of the modern era. During the global rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines, Krispy Kreme announced that anyone who showed their vaccination card at a counter could receive a free original glazed donut every single day for the rest of the year. The move sparked an avalanche of global media coverage, late-night talk show monologues, and intense internet debates. While some critics questioned the health irony, the campaign successfully positioned Krispy Kreme at the absolute center of the cultural conversation, generating billions of free media impressions. The IPO successfully raised hundreds of millions of dollars, which the company immediately used to pay down debt and further scale its incredibly profitable Delivered Fresh Daily network. No longer reliant on customers driving out to distant factories, the brand perfected the art of dropping fresh, beautifully packaged boxes into high-traffic grocery stores, convenience chains, and gas stations every single morning. The king of donuts had officially returned to the public markets, stronger, smarter, and far more resilient than ever before. Navigating the modern, hyper-competitive fast food landscape requires agility, and Krispy Kreme's recent history is a masterclass in strategic pivot. In 2024, the brand announced a massive, highly publicized nationwide distribution partnership with McDonald's, aiming to drop fresh donuts into thousands of golden arches across America. However, the operational reality of managing logistics for such a massive footprint proved incredibly complex. Rising supply chain costs and shifting unit demands meant the partnership wasn't yielding the profitable results corporate leaders wanted. Proving they had learned from their past mistakes of chasing growth at the expense of profitability, Krispy Kreme made the tough, disciplined decision to amicably wind down the McDonald's venture. Instead of overextending its own delivery fleet, Krispy Kreme aggressively executed a comprehensive turnaround plan to deleverage its balance sheet and protect its profit margins. The company outsourced its U.S. fresh delivery network to expert third-party logistics partners and aggressively closed underperforming retail doors. Simultaneously, they shifted toward a capital-light growth model by refranchising company-owned markets, selling off operational control in regions like Japan and the Western U.S. to major private equity and restaurant groups, while retaining lucrative royalty streams. Today, the brand thrives as a true multi-channel monopoly of joy. Rather than oversaturating every corner deli with stale products like they did in 2004, they now partner exclusively with high-volume retail giants like Target, Walmart, and Costco to deliver pristine daily service displays. Furthermore, they have insulated themselves against modern health trends like GLP-1 weight loss medications by positioning their product not as an everyday breakfast staple, but as the ultimate digital-first, premium indulgence for holidays and special celebrations. With a digital sales surge and plans to anchor European expansion with a massive new flagship theater in the Netherlands, Krispy Kreme has finally built a bulletproof business structure. The wild, decades-long journey of Krispy Kreme offers invaluable blueprints for both business and life. The first major lesson is the danger of sacrificing your core identity on the altar of rapid expansion. When corporate leadership diluted their premium brand equity in 2004 by throwing stale, day-old donuts into every gas station in America, they nearly destroyed the company. In business and in personal branding, scarcity creates value. If your product or service is available everywhere without effort, it ceases to be special. Protect your magic, maintain your high standards, and never sacrifice your unique value proposition for short-term, unsustainable gains. The second critical takeaway is the power of humility in going back to basics when a crisis hits. Krispy Kreme didn't survive its near-death experience by trying to become a health food brand or a trendy coffee house. They survived by looking in the mirror, admitting their operational mistakes, and refocusing entirely on what made them iconic in the first place: a perfectly executed, hot, fresh, original glazed donut. When you find yourself in a personal or professional tailspin, the solution is rarely to completely reinvent yourself out of desperation. It is to strip away the noise and master your core strength with absolute excellence. Finally, this story proves that true resilience requires strategic agility and disciplined execution. By shifting to a capital-light, hub-and-spoke model, cleaning up their balance sheet, and embracing smart digital-first scarcity, Krispy Kreme transformed from a fragile, volatile business into an unstoppable global powerhouse. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the fascinating world of business history and corporate turnarounds, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now. By doing so, you'll make sure you never miss out on any of our future videos, where we unpack the incredible stories and invaluable lessons behind the world's most iconic brands.